He strutted into power 2 years ago, keen to show he wanted diversity and equality in his cabinet.
A cabinet that looks like Canada.
And in his country.
Mr. Justin J.P. Trudeau.
Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau won the hearts of many.
He's the most handsome man I've ever laid eyes on.
But not everyone is smitten, especially when it comes to the issue of immigration.
Our system now is in shambles, and I think a lot of this has to do with the messaging, the inconsistent messaging that has been coming out of Justin Trudeau's personal communication shop.
While Trudeau's welcoming of Syrian refugees has made headlines around the world, some are angry that this open-door attitude doesn't match reality, encouraging an influx of Haitian immigrants crossing the border from the US.
But to all of our friends in Little Haiti, your day of justice is coming, believe me.
60,000 Haitians were promised temporary protection in the US after the 2010 earthquake. But that promise runs out in January, and they have started making alternative plans. More than 7,500 people have entered Canada since June, forcing Trudeau to tone down his welcome message and set up a special task force.
Canada is an open and welcoming society because Canadians have confidence in our immigration system and have confidence that we are a country based on laws.
The Prime Minister was seen as building on a legacy of previous leaders who've welcomed immigrants to Canadian shores. People from more than 190 nations arrived last year, mainly from the Philippines, India, China, Iran and Pakistan. Syria also made the top 10 list for the very first time in 2016 after its war intensified. But Trudeau's critics in Parliament say most asylum seekers could be left in limbo for up to 10 years because of a bureaucratic backlog. And even then, they could be deported if they don't make the cut. So is the Canadian Prime Minister sending mixed messages to immigrants, or can he actually sustain the growing number of people wanting a future in the Great White North? Vanessa Keneally, The Newsmakers.
Well, to discuss this, I'm joined now from Toronto by Chris Alexander. He's a former Canadian immigration minister who served under Prime Minister Stephen Harper. We also have Desmond Cole. He's a journalist and activist in Toronto. And in Geneva, Joel Millman. He's the senior press officer at the International Organization for Migration. Gentlemen, thank you all for joining us. Let me start with you, Desmond. When it comes to immigration, particularly with regards these thousands of Haitians right now who are trying to make Canada their home, is brand Trudeau at odds with the actions of Prime Minister Trudeau?
Absolutely, Imran. I think that what Justin Trudeau is selling around the world is a branding exercise about Canada's openness that doesn't match with reality. And I would hasten to add that Canada is no different from the rest of the white European so-called developed world, which does not want immigrants from Africa and the African diaspora to stay permanently in its country. Canada, like the United States, had offered some temporary asylum to Haitians after their 2004 political crisis and after the 2010 earthquake. But just like the United States, Canada doesn't want Haitians to stay. We bring immigrants here, we've seen from Syria and from many other parts of the world, and we immediately give them status so they don't have to worry about their future. But for African refugees and for the African diaspora, including Haiti, the stay is always temporary. And Trudeau told people that this was the place to come to safety. And now we see that Haitians are subject to deportation again under the Trudeau government. Even under the Harper government, deportations to Haiti were temporarily halted. And I can't imagine why anyone would be wanting to send people at this current time with all the turmoil in Haiti to go back there.
I'm interested to hear what Chris Alexander thinks of this, because Chris, I know you're no big fan of Justin Trudeau, but is that fair coming from Desmond that the Haitians are at the bottom of the ladder because they are perhaps perceived as being of African descent? Is that the reason?
I have to respectfully disagree with Desmond. Over my time as minister and our time in government, the fastest growing source of immigration to Canada was Africa, were African countries. And they were coming mostly through economic streams on the basis of the point system that applies to everyone who wants to come here. They were also coming as refugees, and they were the largest stream of resettled refugees until the Iraqi and Syrian wars boosted the numbers from those countries because of the very large populations suddenly in need of help there. In terms of Haiti, we are the largest diaspora of Haitians in the world, between 150 and 200,000, mostly in Montreal. We've had a Governor General who was born in Haiti. We have very talented people across the board whose roots are in Haiti. Denis Laferrière is a member of the Académie Française. No other Canadian has ever achieved that. And yes, we gave a helping hand after the crisis in 2004, political crisis that forced Aristide to leave. We did it again, extended it in 2010. But our priority as a government, and I think to be fair, the Trudeau government's priority has been to help the Haitians who are here temporarily to transition to permanent residence. And we've seen thousands of those of them do so. I think it's only fair that we should open our doors, as we have been, to Haitians coming from the United States, where a government and a president are not upholding their humanitarian or immigration traditions and principles. But we should do it in an organized, competent way, not the way that this government has been handling it. We should let people come across the border at our entry points safely, and we should deal with their cases rapidly. That was happening under our government, but we've seen gross incompetence on the part of this government.
Okay, Joel Millman, I have to go to Twitter to a tweet from the Prime Minister's office from March 16th, 2017. The political context is when Donald Trump announces his Muslim ban. You have, regardless of who you are or where you come from, there's always a place for you in Canada. This is from the Twitter handle Canadian PM. These Haitians go, okay, we fear our status in America, our protector status. They cross the border, they go to Canada. Canada says, no, we don't really mean all of you all at once. And thousands of them are getting deported. Isn't that a terrible indictment of the current policy of the current government?
I don't know if I'd go so far as to call it a terrible indictment. I think what you're raising are some very important and sort of legalistic problems or issues that arise in migration worldwide. Both Canada and the U.S. are excellent members of the organization that I work for, IOM. They're members in very good standing. They're great donors. They're great resettlers of migrants. We've worked with both of them extensively. What you have in this case is something I guess you would call akin to jurisdiction shopping. Haitians who have TPS, temporary protected status in the United States, don't want to forfeit that, but they're concerned about what happens when the deadline's reached. Legally, they really shouldn't go to another country and try to get a deal that's similar. But politically and in the emotional times that we're in, that seems irresistible for people, especially when you see the kind of fear and the kind of polarization that's going on with the debate in the U.S. We would simply say this has to be managed, as I believe some of the other guests are suggesting as well. And of course, IOM stands ready to assist both these member states in working out some kind of arrangement that pleases all the sides. I don't think it's an indictment. I just do think it's a bump in the road, and someone has to work on that.
Desmond, are many of these Haitians being unfairly duped because, I hate to use this phrase, there seems to be a lot of fake news doing the rounds? Haitians getting these messages via WhatsApp. They're seeing posts on Facebook saying Canada's open. Go to Canada. Your protected status in America is under threat. Go to Canada, you'll be fine. They go to Canada. Canada says, we don't know where you got that message from. And hey, guess what? We set up camps along the border, so come into our camp. And now you might lose your protected status back in America. So should we maybe not be blaming the Canadian government here, but maybe those middlemen who are maybe, I don't know, siphoning off cash from these poor Haitians who are vulnerable and under threat?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the people who are acting as so-called immigration consultants and taking a lot of money from people to help them come to this country, because they are also part of the problem. But we mentioned off the top, it was the Prime Minister of this country himself who, out of political opportunism, told immigrants to come to this country and told them that they would be welcome here. And I just go back to the issue of deportation. Why would Canada, like Hurricane Irma has just finished ravaging Haiti again. Why at this time would we be allowing our government to deport people to Haiti? That is such a callous and inhumane policy. And as for the orderly nature or the need for an orderly process to have people come across the border. We don't have that right now, in large part because of something called the Safe Third Country Agreement between Canada and the United States. And what this Safe Third Country Agreement, which is a big euphemism, by the way, what it means is that America is considered by Canada to be a safe place for immigrants. So if an immigrant comes from somewhere else and goes to America first, by Canada's laws, you can't just walk up to the Canadian border in an orderly fashion and say, I am not safe in America, I'd like to seek asylum here. The Canadian government has the right to turn you away under the Safe Third Country Act, saying you're already in a safe country. Now, no reasonable person, Imran, would say that the United States is a safe place for immigrants and refugees right now, but that is the stance of our government. And because of that irresponsible stance, people have been sneaking across our border. And when this happens in winter, when people are trying to evade the proper crossings, they lose their hands, they lose their fingers due to frostbite, they risk drowning, they risk all kinds of safety things. This is about the safety of Haitians and others trying to cross the border, and it's not being taken seriously by this government.
Chris, is Canada wrong to deport these people back to Haiti? Would you have done the same when you were in office?
I think Canada is right to offer a pathway to permanent residence for every Haitian who's interested in staying here. And yes, if the humanitarian situation or the political situation is bad in any country, we should not be deporting people there. And by the way, in the vast majority of cases, when people go home, they aren't taken into custody and forced to go to the airport. They leave voluntarily. So I agree with Desmond. We should live up to our humanitarian rhetoric. I also agree with him that we should be suspending the Safe Third Country Agreement. The United States is not meeting its humanitarian obligations. It is not a safe country, certainly for people from 8 banned nationalities, certainly not for the dreamers who are facing disaster in their lives because of the DACA predicament. And across the board, the United States is retrenching after decades of being much more generous to refugees. In 2016, the United States resettled 85,000 refugees. Canada resettled between 55 and 60,000 refugees, and we are 1/9 the size of the United States. I don't think anyone in the IOM, the UNHCR, or anywhere in the refugee advocacy community around the world is happy with US performance at the moment. But if Canada wants to be the poster child for refugee resettlement, for humanitarian principle, we have to live up to that rhetoric, and that means welcoming people safely at our points of entry, and then providing resources to our Immigration and Refugee Board to process those cases in a timely manner. We're supposed to be doing it within 2 months. But the latest figures show that the waiting time will be many years now, perhaps as many as 11 years for some applicants. This government has been asleep at the switch on these issues. When we left office, there were fewer than 10,000 asylum claims in the backlog. Already at the moment, we have 30,000, close to 30,000 in the backlog, and no sign of action on the part of this government to manage the situation. Well, it's not a crisis here if we have a competent government. But this government is creating a crisis by forcing people to make unsafe choices and then leaving them in the lurch when they get here, not meeting our own service standards.
Joel, is Haiti a place, and I don't know how you sort of organize or triage these countries rather when you look at them in terms of safety and failed states and so on, but is Haiti safe enough to send even one refugee or migrant back to if the Canadians feel they don't want to take the person in? Is Haiti a safe country to send people back to?
Well, first of all, I'm not sure that Haiti is the only place you can send somebody back to. If someone comes up to the border and they have legal status, however temporary, in the United States, they could be sent back there. The question is the U.S. safe? Is Haiti safe? Haiti, like the Philippines, like Ireland, like quite a number of historically migrant-sending countries, has a culture. Island countries often have these cultures of sending lots of people regularly around the world, around their region to seek employment and improve their lives. You know, we at IOM believe that all migration should be legal, it should be safe, and it should be secure for everybody, including the destination countries. And we think one way to guarantee that is to make free passage a lot more likely, let people come and leave as they please. You know, most migrants, as the first guest talked about, they don't want migrants to stay. And we agree that most countries around the world definitely want migrants to come for certain reasons. They also want the option of knowing they're going to leave, but they make that impossible by erecting barriers and make it very difficult to come in and make it very unlikely someone who has come in, even those who've come in legally, will risk the chance of being turned back a second time, so they stay past their expiration date. This is a big problem that can be alleviated somewhat by having more of an open back and forth, as migration had been, say, in my father and grandfather's time. I'm not so sure the question is whether Haiti is safe, but whether or not safe migration is something that countries, and I said earlier, Canada and U.S. are both fine members in good standing of IOM, are ready to work together for that kind of open border and that kind of free transit.
Desmond, would you advise anybody wanting a better life from a country that's gone through hard times, would you advise them to go to Canada right now?
I mean, it's a difficult sell. I feel that thousands have come across the border in the last weeks because of a sense of lack of safety on their own part. And I have to give people like that the benefit of the doubt that they know what it is that they are running away from. But I will say, and I want to qualify the point, Imran, that I made earlier about the African diaspora and how African diasporic people are being treated when they come to this country. We have immigration detention in Canada, and beyond the fact that we have immigration detention, we don't have a limit for how long we keep people in immigration detention. So these are people like those who have come across the border here who don't have regular status in Canada, and they are kept in maximum security facilities. If you go to those facilities, you will see that almost all of the men who are being kept under immigration detention, some of them for years, are black men.
Right.
There is a man actually in federal court as you and I are doing this interview by the name of Ibrahim Toure from Gambia. Ibrahim Toure has been in immigration detention in Canada for 4.5 years.
Well, and I'm glad you brought it up.
You will not find white European origin
and we're going to look into that.
In our immigration detention system, the way that you find African people in it. And so what I fear
Desmond,
is that when things don't work out in the immigration system, it is people of the African diaspora who are being punished the most harshly by this government. And that has to be recognized, and it has to be something that people take into consideration before they just willy-nilly come to Canada. And I don't want to diminish by saying willy-nilly. I don't think it's a decision taken lightly. But
well understood. Desmond, I got to jump in because I got to move on.
I fear that right now we can't do that.
Desmond, I got to move on. We're tight for time. Chris Alexander, Desmond Cole, and Joel Millman, I thank you all for joining us on the Newsmakers.